Off.
Here we go. I'll tell you then where we're going. Somebody's already here.
Hey, somebody.
Okay, I got a little delay here. I'll tell you then where we're going. Hi, everybody. This is Chris Hoff, the radical therapist.
Hey, somebody.
And there's a delay in my earphones, and this is going to be problematic.
I
got a little delay here. I'll tell you then where we're going. Hi, everybody. This is Chris. I got to cancel this for a minute. I got to figure out the radical therapist.
Hey, somebody.
And there's a delay in my earphones, and this is going to be problematic.
I got a little off.
Okay. I turned it off, so we can end it later. I got out of the other thing. Sorry for that delay, everybody. This is Chris, the Radical Therapist podcast, Radical Therapist YouTube channel. We're live. This is our first time doing this. I invited my good friend and Radical Therapist alumni, Brian Doster, here. This is what my intention about this is to kind of do, I guess to do, just kind of have two therapists kind of take on the topics of the day that are going on, particularly in culture as well as in therapy. And today is going to be kind of primarily in culture because, there's a lot going on, obviously, and you have two male identified therapists here, and we have a lot of stuff going on that are involving men and women and those that get pregnant the title of this particular episode is it's a insecure man's world. And so we wanted to kind of take on some of the topics today just for a little while, and maybe if people like this thing, we'll do this kind of originally. So obviously the first thing up, Brian, is that, Roe v. Wade got struck down this last week. Here we are. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of information being thrown around. A lot of ideas about how to access abortion, how to protest, how to kind of begin to operate politically, and we can talk a little bit about that. But before we get into the politics, I guess I wanted to talk about, as therapists, how are we going to kind of meet this challenge? It's already starting to show up, and I direct a community counseling practice. It's already starting to show up in that context, and I don't know. What do you think? What do you think is our role, or what are we to do as therapists as people are beginning to have their lives rearranged in this very kind of dramatic and scary way? So.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me, right, is advocating, right, and creating those safe spaces. I am fortunate enough to work with Lisa Morrell, and in her office, right, she is LGBTQIA centered. And, when you walk up to that space, that this is a space where if you identify with that group, you are safe to be here, right? Not saying that others are excluded, but the reality is that we want this group of people to know, come. And so when I think about where we are with Roe v. Wade, right, that to some degree, our advocacy, our centering of women feeling safe to communicate about their abortions, we're going to have to be very visible in our work and visible in what we say and do and how we show up for that community.
Yeah. I was thinking about, what does that mean, like in the work? And I was thinking about, how does that look? So people that might be wondering, how does that look in the work? I was thinking of William Madsen. Some listeners might be familiar with him. He wrote the book Collaborative Therapy with Multi-Stressed Families. If you haven't read that, it's a very good book. One of my favorite books from my grad program that I got introduced to. And actually done workshops with him and have, been taught by him. But he talks about a kind of a helping map, a collaborative helping map. And some aspects of it, I'm going to kind of truncate it in some ways, but some aspects of that are like, asking questions about constraints, asking questions about supports, and then asking questions about planning. And then, of course, the preferences that are there too. And I think, if there's some way that, as therapists, how are we to guide our work? It's, around those kinds of things that, what are the constraints that people are going to be facing in this, moment? What are the supports that they have access to, and how they plan? And I'm always thinking about, even in kind of very big problems, facing these kinds of big problems, that there's always kinds of responses or resistances to be found. There's always personal agency to be accessed in the face of that, even when it feels really, really hopeless. So I think about therapy, that's kind of how I'm thinking about, how do we guide our work moving forward in helping people that are really struggling with these times. That's kind of what I've been thinking about. What do you think?
I think that's great. Right. I think it provides a clear kind of blueprint, right? A blueprint for how we need to show up.
Yeah. Now, what about the politics of Roe v. Wade? I mean, what do you think about how do we support folks in, I have this thought. I was listening to another podcast. Let me throw this out there and see what you think. I was listening to another podcast where they were talking about how people are beginning to make this argument, like a kind of a moral argument about, that this actually continues oppression of people of color and folks that are on the low economic scale, and kind of making this moral argument about that. And the guy was saying, and this is for those of the Why Theory podcast, they did a podcast not called Abortion Theory that I think everybody should listen to, but and they're psychoanalytic theorists, but they do have make some interesting points about, and they're Marxist, or at least one of them is. So, and they make some interesting points about, you're never going to win a moral argument with people, and you might have some familiarity with this, Brian. You're never going to win a moral argument with people that believe they have God on their side. And so how do you escape that kind of moral argument? And sometimes even that moral, if clumsily enough, it's very condescending and actually kind of like low-key racist in some ways, probably too. Mm-hmm. And so how do you escape that kind of moral argument that doesn't seem to be going anywhere, that has been doing it, and make it really, and the argument, maybe the Marxist argument is, how do you make it really just about politics? That we had an equal rights amendment that never really got codified, that we had leadership that never ever codified Roe v. Wade, and there's still that the Equal Rights Amendment kind of floating out there in a particular way. And it's just less about, just thinking it's less about, morality or all that kind of stuff, or even trying to argue it out on a neoliberal terrain, meaning like body autonomy and stuff like that. And just making it about politics. And I know people might push back on that in various ways, and it's a truncated argument. That's okay, push back. But, that argument, like, how do you just make it about politics? I mean, is this a country that offers equal rights to everybody? I mean, is that part of our Constitution? And then you can get out of those kinds of traps that people keep falling into. So that's what I've been thinking about lately. What do you think?
Well, when I hear you say that, I'm thinking, don't we just need to be talking about the right to choose and what choice looks like for individuals in our society? Is that what you're like? When we get caught up in this idea of morality, I don't give a damn about morality. I don't care. All I care about is does my neighbor or my female counterparts have the same rights as me? Are their rights restricted differently than mine? And at the end of the day, what we're seeing is the answer is yes, right? Like, their right to choose, they don't have a full 100% right to choose. And that's weird to me. Like, there's nothing in my life as a man that I can say the government is holding for me, or can say that they will lock me up based off of my, not yet now, we don't know where things are going,
no
but
other time, remember?
right. But it's really weird. I don't know. That's what comes to me, right to choose.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I forget her name, but there was a New York Times, I think, op-ed where she related it to the 10th Amendment, right? This forced pregnancy that goes back to the days of like enslavement, right?
Yes.
And that's where the argument, that kind of ground is where you can have a good argument. And in any way, the people that are like, you know, pro-birth, I guess, I don't know, what do we call that? I don't, have been
I
very
don't know.
creative and innovative in their legal things, and the people, I don't know, the liberals, the left, or whatever, have not been so. And it's time to, like, I just think they thought that the Supreme Court would just never do so, like, would always have their backs in some sort of way. And I think if you rely on the Supreme Court to give you rights, and then they can possibly take them away from you. And that's why I think we need to talk about this in a very political, like the politic of it, and kind of and codify it in the Constitution in some way. And that's the system we're in. I know other people are trying to create new systems and outside of that kind of stuff, but we're just kind of talking about the system we're in. So,
well, Hoff, I think that, I mean, if we want to talk about the politics, the Supreme Court gave us a way to talk about the politics of it all, right? Friday, they released the Roe v. Wade, but Thursday, they had released the opinions around guns, right? And this idea that if you have a gun, that states cannot tell you how restricted it should be for you to carry that gun, right? That they are like, that's out of bounds. It's against the Second Amendment. Like, oh my God, you can't do that. But Friday, they turned around and said, oh, states, we need you to actually put in laws to figure out how to operate on a woman's body. That's the politics of it, right? That's the hypocrisy of it all.
Okay. I'm sure we'll be revisiting that topic, but in the effort of time, we're going to kind of move on. And okay, so let's talk about what our next topic was going to be. There was an article in the New York Times that talked about gun sellers' message to Americans: man up, right? And that the number of firearms in the U.S. is outpacing the country's population, as an emboldened gun industry and its allies target buyers with the rhetoric of fear, machismo, and defiance. And I was thinking about, gun safety and after the Uvalde massacre, and I was thinking about people were kind of calling on Congress to do something about it. And I was thinking, they're not going to do anything about it, because nobody, to get another senator on the other side or whatever, nobody wants to be viewed as a beta male in front of, I've come to learn that patriarchy is about how men not appear to other women, but how men appear to other men. Right. And so, and this idea of like, that people have to do that toughness thing. And then you're even having the gun sellers now appealing to this machismo, that they know that I'm going to make the argument that they know their clientele by and large struggles with insecurity. Yep, I said it. They struggle with male insecurity, which is a mofo if you're dealing with it. And so, and they're appealing to it. It's flat out there. They're flat out putting it out there that they're appealing to that insecurity in the effort to get firearms. So somebody to take a step back or step into like gun safety legislation invites comparisons to like the beta male or whatever, invites some insecurity, and nobody wants to do that. And so it's going to be really hard to get many of these old white senators to move on that. Any thoughts?
No, I agree. That was one of the quotes that stood out to me, right? This idea of self-defense, machismo, and an overarching sense of fear, right? And so then I thought about, oftentimes guns are to mask the fear that people really are experiencing, right? There's this, I don't want to tell you that I'm afraid that somebody could possibly break into my house or somebody could assault me. Like, I'm afraid of that. And that would take a lot to have to say from a male perspective, I think, in order to maintain an alpha male perspective, right? So instead of saying I'm afraid, I'm gonna go buy a large gun, AK-47, whatever that may look like, because now in our society, that makes me look like the protector, right? I'm the protector because I now have a gun. And so, yeah, the article, I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, and so what does that mean for therapy, right? And so I think you're familiar with this, Brian, and I'm familiar with like we're often taking on male insecurity and its influences in various ways, right? And so, and how do we make that visible, or how do you help somebody step into vulnerability without the fear of being characterized in a particular way, that kind of thing? Any thoughts about how you do that?
Wait, say that again. Say what you're asking again.
Well, I was saying, that we're often externalizing and naming male insecurity in the work that we're doing, how it shows up and influences men in particular ways, right? You and I have offline have had many of these kinds of conversations. So I'm just wondering, what do you think about how does that look? I mean, I know it's hard work and there's no easy answer to any of that, but how do we begin to continue to work with men in this culture? I'm always struck by, these ads that show up on my Facebook thing, like men join the warriors, right? These like, I'm going to help these men become whatever. And it's just, every time I see that, it's just like an army of insecure men feeling like they need to like be in a particular range of masculinity. And that sort of masculinity, I don't want to say it's bad, but it's just one part of masculinity, right? That there's a whole range of masculinity or masculinities that are available to us, but somehow we're stuck with this gun-toting individualist, pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of thing, and the problems that causes in therapy. Sorry I'm talking so much, but the problems that causes in therapy.
I know this is your wheelhouse. Go ahead.
So, but I was just thinking, and I'm wondering, and we have to take that on. I mean, you and I have been having conversations about that, and maybe I'm asking like, how you doing with it now?
Well, I think there's a part of, right, it goes to the work that we do around deconstruction, right? So how do you deconstruct what it means and what it looks like to be a man? And how do you deconstruct and reconstruct what it means to man up? Right. And so that's the work that I try to bring to the room when we're having conversations like that. Right. What does it mean to, and what you're saying is like masculinity in and of itself is not bad, right? Like masculine energy is good. It has a healthy place. It's something that helps a part of our universe and energy and how it all operates. The problem is when it becomes a place where masculine energy believes that it must take center stage of everything, right? And so really, you taught us this, right? The idea of helping men understand how to share power, right? How to negotiate what power looks like, right? And not believe that in negotiation there's a loss of power, but that they are gaining by negotiation because those who they are negotiating with oftentimes are joining in what they would like to see happen. So that's what comes to mind for me.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that. Okay. Final topic, checking on time. Okay, final topic. I came across this article. It was there was a study that the women's health policy did. I think it was Fredrickson, Ranji, Salganikoff, and Long did a study where they looked at women's experiences in COVID-19, and I'm going to kind of look at this thing, and they were talking about there's this trope that like, well, men will do anything but go to therapy, that kind of thing, but since we live in a male-centered society, meaning patriarchy, right, The truth is that women were 20% more likely to consider seeking care than men. However, when it actually came to seeing a mental health professional, men were 12% more likely to get care. And the data shows that women were more likely to skip care in general instead of accessing therapy, because for the fear of losing job opportunities, or obviously having to shoulder the care for others, right? And so in reality, yes, more women would want therapy, but they're not able to access it because of all the caregiving that they have to do, and the loss of job opportunities that men don't face. But the reality is that, once again, men actually 12% more get therapy. So what do you think about that?
That's wild to me because um, one of the things that it's always interesting is that usually when I have gotten a male client, more often than not, it's because of a partner who is seeking therapy for their part. Like, and yet, while they are seeking care for someone else, they may be also, right, not going and taking care of themselves because they are busy managing the care of their partner, the care of possibly children, the care of ailing parents, whatever that is, and giving all of that energy away. So it was really surprising when I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then sacrificing in themselves for knowing that both folks need care, but that in a heterosexual relationship, the male partner getting the care. Yeah, that's so everybody, actually, it isn't true. Men will get therapy more often because everybody, we live, unfortunately, in a male-centered world. Or not, I'm sure everybody's kind of clear on that one now. But so what the task for us is actually, how do we help people access care? And I think one of the tasks of California Family Institute, where Bryan spent a lot of time, and the work that you're doing now, and is like, how do we help folks access care? At least we're trying to do it on the economic level. It's harder sometimes for people to leave jobs or do that kind of thing, and I don't know the answer to that. There's not an easy answer to that, but at least in some ways we're trying to at least make it affordable or accessible.
Affordable and accessible, right? I mean, we have teletherapy now,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and affordability.
Yeah, and that has opened up a lot of accessibility. The move to Zoom, which we're on right now, but the move to Zoom and that kind of thing, and so that has created a lot of opportunities. And I do feel like the bulk of our clients probably are women. Yeah, I would say. Yes. At this time. So, but we do, but in the world, I think it's still, this study was kind of fascinating because it is still, male centered in a particular way. So, and so the work is, how do we, as men, here we are talking, you and I, but how do we decenter ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I was, when we were talking about having this conversation, I was very aware of even having a conversation about Roe v. Wade, right?
Yeah, right.
Is,
Yeah, I do think, more men need to talk about that. I do think, and, I've never said this publicly. I'm going to say it now because there's probably nobody on here watching us right now. But, and I've been hesitant to do it because I don't have consent, but I do. I'm not going to go into any details or anything like that. But my life has benefited from an abortion, and completely. And I wouldn't have the life that I have today if it wasn't for access to health care, right? And that kind of health care. And so I haven't ever shared that anywhere that's publicly. And I think more men need to, at least that's what I hear people calling for more men to kind of speak out about that. And so, yeah, we are going to make mistakes, but we should at least try to have these conversations so more men can see that, hopefully we support and hopefully advocate for. And and hopefully thinking about it and trying to take some action, real action in the world, and in a way that's supporting women.
I agree. The singer Jasmine Sullivan on Sunday at the BET Awards called on men to speak up and talk about how they have benefited from it. So it's an appropriate space.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. How was this for you, Bryan?
Ooh, different, but I think the fact that I can't see kind of who's showing up, what's going on.
No, I can't either. I had to like close it down because there was an echo. There's a delay on it, I think, for if you want to edit comments. So you probably, if people are doing chat, you can. I can't see it. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. And if you're giving a shit, that's okay too.
It's fine.
Yeah. You're feeding
but
the algorithm. If you're hating on us, you're feeding the algorithm, and we appreciate it. So.
But I hope though, if anybody is listening, I don't think that we tore anybody down. I think we held space for all, and I hope that people hear that. But I look forward to chatting again.
Yeah, and we'll do it again. Anybody that still might be here, and we'll do this again in a couple of weeks. We're going to take the holiday. There's a holiday on Monday. We'll take that off. You willing to come back in a couple of weeks, Bryan? And maybe
I am.
We'll have some new topics, maybe a little more therapy specific, or just some of the stuff that's going on, and maybe we'll get some feedback from this and continue some of these conversations. So,
sounds good.
Thanks for coming on, Bryan, and doing a little live conversation with me. And I hope to continue it and build an audience and have people participate too.
Thanks, Huff.
Okay, we'll see you.